"Don't go in there," our housekeeper whispered, grabbing my arm so hard her knuckles went white. "Please, Mrs. Aldridge." "Not yet. You need to see something first." I had known Marvella for 22 years. She had helped me raise my son. She had held my hand at my husband's funeral. She did not panic. She did not whisper. So when she pulled me away from the door to my own dining room on the morning of my daughter's baby shower, the shower I had spent 4 months planning, the one with the pale yellow balloons and the little sandwiches with the crusts cut off, I stopped. "What are you talking about?" I said. She didn't answer. She just looked at me with those steady brown eyes and said, "Come with me to the kitchen. Come now." I should back up. My daughter Melissa is 34. She is smart and kind, and she has her father's laugh, the one that fills up a whole room. She married a man named Gregory 3 years ago. I tried to like Gregory. I genuinely tried. He had a good handshake, and he always remembered to bring wine when he came to dinner, and Melissa lit up around him in those early months in a way that made me think, okay, this is good. But there were small things, the way he sometimes answered questions she had asked, as if she hadn't spoken at all, the way he'd glance at her credit card statement when she left it on the counter, then quickly look away when he noticed me watching, the way he talked about her job, she's a physical therapist, a good one, as her little schedule, as if her patients and her hours and her decade of union training were a hobby she'd picked up between yoga classes. My husband Theodore would have said, "You're looking for trouble, Elaine." He was probably right. He usually was. But Theodore had been gone for 6 years, and I couldn't call him anymore to argue me out of my own instincts. The baby shower was supposed to be everything. Melissa was 28 weeks along, and she'd had a hard first trimester, a lot of fear, a lot of waiting rooms. We all exhaled when she crossed into the second trimester. I started buying things. A mobile with little clouds, a quilt I sewed myself, ivory with yellow ducks, because I had to do something with my hands while I worried. I'd booked the private room at Oleander, a restaurant in town with big windows and white tablecloths, but Melissa asked if we could do it at my house instead. "I just want to feel at home," she said, and I said of course, and spent the next 3 weeks making my home into something out of a magazine. 40 guests were coming. Family, her friends from college, her colleagues. Gregory's mother, Pauline, was flying in from Scottsdale. I had made a chicken salad that took 2 days. I had ordered a custom cake from the bakery on Fernwood that does the edible flowers. I had been awake since 5:30 that morning arranging things. Marvella brought me to the kitchen and closed the door behind us. "I need you to look at this," she said, and she put her phone on the counter. It was a screenshot of a bank account. I didn't recognize it at first. Then I saw Melissa's full name at the top, her checking account, the one her direct deposit goes into every 2 weeks. The balance was $43. I looked up at Marvella. "She doesn't know I saw," Marvella said. "Her phone was on the counter last week and a notification came in. I didn't mean to look, but then I looked. That can't be right," I said. "She makes good money. Scroll down," Marvella said. I scrolled. There were transfers, every 2 weeks like clockwork, on the same day as her direct deposit. Large transfers, $1,100, $1,400, sometimes more, going to an account I didn't recognize, not a joint account, not a savings account, a separate account, a different bank, in Gregory's name only. 6 months of transfers. Going back to January, I had to sit down. "She told me last month she couldn't afford to get her car serviced," I said. I was talking to myself more than to Marvella. She said she was going to wait until spring. I offered to help, and she said no, it was fine, they had a budget. Marvella nodded slowly. "She can't afford anything," I said. "He's taking everything." I sat there for a long moment. My chicken salad was on the counter in its covered bowl. The cake was in the refrigerator. 40 people were going to walk through my front door in 2 hours, and my pregnant daughter was somewhere in this house, probably helping someone set up chairs, not knowing I had just seen the inside of her bank account. "Does she know you saw?" I asked. "No," Marvella said. "I don't think so. But Miss Aldridge, there's something else." She took the phone back, scrolled, handed it to me again. It was a text thread. She had screenshotted it. She had seen slightly because the edges were blurred. The texts were between Gregory and a number saved as T. I will not repeat everything I read in that thread. I'll only say this. T was not a business contact. T was not a friend. T had been in Gregory's life for at least 8 months, according to the texts, and he was planning to see her the following weekend when Melissa would be at her prenatal appointment alone, as she apparently went to most of them. Alone. I hadn't known she was going alone. She'd never told me. My hands were very steady, which surprised me. I had expected them to shake. Instead, I just felt something go very cold and very quiet inside me, the way a house goes quiet after a door slams. "When did you screenshot these?" I said. 3 days ago, Marvella said. "I've been trying to figure out what to do. I didn't want to ruin today, but I couldn't. I couldn't watch her open gifts and eat cake, and I'm the only one who knows." I looked at the clock on the microwave. 7:48 in the morning. Guests were arriving at 10. The next hour I spent very carefully. I did not tell Melissa, not yet. Not like this, not in my kitchen at 8 in the morning while she was still in the shower and her hair was wet. And she had another 8 weeks left of a pregnancy that had already scared us both. I was not going to hand her that information like a grenade with the pin already pulled. I called my son instead. Melissa's older brother, Warren. He lives 40 minutes away, and he answered on the second ring, already awake because he has 3 kids under 7 and nobody sleeps past 6 in that house anymore. I told him what Marvella had shown me. I kept my voice low. I kept it flat. I heard him breathe out slowly. "Mom," he said. "I know. Does Melissa know any of this?" "I don't think so." He was quiet for a moment. "What do you want to do?" "I don't know yet," I said, "but I need you here. I need you here before 10. He said he'd be there by 9. I went back out to help with the balloons. I have thought about this many times since, how strange that morning was. How I was tying ribbons onto chairbacks and refilling the ice bucket and smiling when Melissa came downstairs in her blue dress, her belly round and lovely, and she said, "Mom, it looks so beautiful." And I said, "You look beautiful." And both of those things were true at the same time as the other thing, the thing I was carrying like a stone in my chest. Gregory came downstairs 20 minutes later in a button-down shirt, freshly shaved, carrying his coffee mug. He kissed Melissa on the top of her head. He told me the dining room looked great. He asked if there was anything he could help with. "Actually," I said, "could you go check whether we have enough ice in the cooler outside?" "It's on the back patio," he went. I watched him go. Warren arrived at 9:15. He hugged his sister, and then he found me in the kitchen, and he looked at me, and I nodded once, and he understood. That is what it means to have raised someone, a whole conversation in one look. "Where is he?" Warren said very quietly. "Somewhere in the house," I said. "Leave it for now. I have a plan. I should explain something about Pauline." Gregory's mother and I had met 4 times before that morning. She is a trim woman in her late 60s, always put together, always slightly formal. We had never had a long conversation. She was not unfriendly, but she kept a certain distance, the way some people do when they're deciding how much of themselves to invest in a situation. She arrived at 9:30 with a gift bag and a fruit tart from a bakery I didn't recognize. I brought her a cup of coffee, and I sat with her at the kitchen table while the rest of the house was still being arranged, and I said very quietly, "Pauline, I need to talk to you about something before this morning gets started, and I need you to stay calm because Melissa is in the next room." She set down her coffee cup. I told her what I'd found. I showed her the screenshots. Marvella had sent them to me. I watched Pauline's face as she read. She didn't speak for a long time. Then she said, "How long have you known?" "Since this morning," I said. "Marvella found it 3 days ago. She came to me today." Pauline pressed her fingers against her mouth. She was quiet for another long moment. Then she said something I did not expect. "I've had a feeling," she said, "for about 4 months. I found a receipt once, in his car, when I was helping him carry groceries, a restaurant I knew he'd never taken Melissa to. He said it was a work dinner." She stopped. I wanted to be wrong. We sat together in the kitchen of my house, 2 women who had never had a real conversation, and we looked at each other. "What do you want to do?" she said. "I want to protect my daughter," I said. "But I want to do it right. She's 28 weeks pregnant. She cannot find out like this in the middle of a party in front of 40 people. Pauline nodded slowly. "Agreed. So here's what I think we do," I said. "The shower started at 10 and it was genuinely lovely. I want to say that. The room looked beautiful. The flowers were perfect. The cake got carried out to a chorus of "oh my gods," and Melissa laughed and covered her face with her hands. She opened gifts for an hour, tiny onesies and a sound machine and a nursing pillow and a very complicated baby carrier that nobody could figure out how to fold, and her face was open and happy in a way that broke my heart a little because I knew. Gregory moved around the edges of the party like he always did at gatherings, comfortable, charming, not trying too hard. He refilled drinks. He laughed at the right moments. His mother watched him from across the room with an expression I recognized because I had the same one. At 11:15, I caught Gregory near the hallway and I said quietly, "Can I steal you for just a minute? I need help with something in the study." He followed me without hesitation. Of course he did. He had no reason to suspect anything. Warren was already in the study. Pauline came in a moment later and closed the door. Gregory looked at the three of us. His smile flickered. "What's going on?" he said. I set my phone on the desk with the screenshots visible. I didn't say anything, I just let him look. The room was very quiet. Through the wall, I could hear the sounds of the party. Voices, laughter, someone saying, "Oh, she's going to be the best mom." Gregory looked at the phone for a long moment. Then he looked up at me, then at his mother. "I can explain," he started. "Don't," Pauline said. Her voice was very calm, calmer than mine would have been. "Don't do that." He stopped. "I'm not going to tell you what you have to do," I said. "You're a grown man, but I am going to tell you what happens next, and I need you to listen carefully." I told him that Melissa would be speaking with a family attorney the following week, that I had already made calls. I had that morning texted my own attorney, a woman named Ruth, who had handled Theodore's estate and who did not waste time, that whatever needed to happen financially would happen with a full picture of the account transfers going back 6 months, that the question of his relationship with T was his business to explain to Melissa in whatever way he chose, but that the financial situation was not going to be a private matter anymore. I told him that if he walked back out to that party and behaved normally for the next 2 hours, and if he agreed to leave the house that afternoon, calmly, with a bag, whatever story he wanted to tell people, Melissa would be the one to decide the next steps at a time of her choosing, not in the middle of her baby shower with her college roommates 15 feet away. Gregory's jaw tightened. "You had no right to look at her account." "I didn't," I said, "but I'm looking at it now." He looked at his mother. I think he expected her to come to his side of the room in some sense. She didn't move. "I love you," she said to him. "I have always loved you, but I am not going to help you with this." He stood there for a moment. I could see him calculating something, what he could say, what he could deny, how solid the ground was under him. Then something went out of his face. Not remorse, I don't think. Just the realization that there was nowhere to go. "Fine," he said. "Fine which part?" Warren said. It was the first thing he'd said since we walked in. "All of it," Gregory said. "We walked back out to the party. I do not know how I did it. I refilled my own coffee. I sat next to Melissa while she opened the last few gifts, and I watched her hold up a little yellow sleeper with ducks on it. Not unlike my quilt, actually. And we laughed about that, the ducks. And I put my arm around her shoulders and she leaned into me the way she used to when she was small." Gregory said his goodbyes at 12:30. He said he had a work call he'd forgotten about, apologized, kissed Melissa on the cheek. She didn't think anything of it. She was surrounded by people who loved her. She was eating cake. Pauline stayed until the last guest left. Then she helped me carry dishes to the kitchen, and when we were alone, she sat at the kitchen table and she cried quietly into a dish towel. I sat with her. I didn't tell her it was okay because it wasn't, but I refilled her coffee and I kept her company. "I should have said something in October," she said. "When I found the receipt." "You wanted to be wrong," I said. "That's not the same as doing nothing." I told Melissa 3 days later. I drove to her house. She was still living there. Gregory had moved to a friend's place, and I brought the casserole she likes, the one with the wild rice, and I sat with her at her kitchen table and I told her everything. What Marvella had seen, what I had found, what had happened in the study. She was very still while I talked. She is her father's daughter in that way. She goes quiet when she's absorbing something instead of loud the way I go. When I finished, she didn't say anything for a long time. "How long was it going on?" she finally said. "Based on the texts, at least 8 months," I said. She nodded slowly. "I thought something was wrong," she said. "I kept thinking it was me, that I was hormonal or anxious, or I kept thinking I was the problem." I reached across the table and took her hand. "The money," she said. "I thought we were just bad at budgeting." "I know," I said. She was quiet again. Then she said, "Did he know you knew? The whole time he was at the party?" "Yes." She looked at me. Something moved across her face that I couldn't quite read. Then she said, "Good." The divorce took 7 months. Ruth was thorough and she was not gentle with the financial documentation, which was correct. The transfers were considered dissipation of marital assets under state law, which meant they factored into the settlement. Gregory did not fight it as hard as I expected. I think he was grateful, in some strange way, to be out. Or maybe he was just tired. I don't know. I stopped trying to understand him sometime around the 2nd month. My granddaughter was born on a Tuesday in late September. 6 pounds, 14 ounces. She came into the world screaming, which her grandfather Theodore would have found hilarious and which I found entirely reassuring. Melissa named her after my mother, an old name, a good name, one that had been waiting. Pauline was in the waiting room when I arrived at the hospital. We sat together for 4 hours, the two of us drinking bad coffee and watching the clock. When the nurse came out and said we could go in, we both stood up at the same time, and she looked at me, and I looked at her, and she reached out and took my hand for just a moment. Nothing was said. We've had coffee twice since then. Real coffee, not hospital waiting room coffee. We talk about our grandchild. We talk about other things too now. She brought me a lemon pound cake last month, and we sat on my back porch, and she told me about a trip she's planning to Portugal, and I told her about the garden I'm finally getting around to replanting, the one I let go after Theodore died. It is a strange thing to gain a friend from a year that also had so much pain in it. But there it is. Marvella still works with me. She still bosses me around in my own kitchen, which she always has. Last week she told me I was overwatering my rosemary, and she was right. I think about that morning sometime. How close I came to not knowing. If her phone had been in her purse instead of on the counter. If Marvella had looked away. If I had gone another 6 months watching Melissa say she couldn't afford to get her car serviced and believing it was just about a budget. I think about the moment in the kitchen at 7:48 in the morning, looking at $43 in my daughter's account, and how the whole world rearranged itself in about 4 seconds. People ask me sometimes if I regret how I handled it, if I should have told Melissa immediately, if waiting even those 3 days was a kindness or a delay. I don't think there's a clean answer to that. I made the choice I made based on what I knew about my daughter and what she was carrying and how much she still had ahead of her. Maybe another mother would have done it differently. Maybe another mother would have been right. What I know is this: she is okay. She is better than okay. She goes to her prenatal checkups with her daughter now, her daughter who is already doing what babies do, which is growing and changing and becoming a person, oblivious to everything that happened before she arrived. Melissa calls me most evenings. We talk about small things, the rosemary, what she's watching on television, what name she's thinking about for the baby's stuffed elephant. That is enough. That is more than enough. I have a garden to replant and a granddaughter who is named for my mother and a friend I didn't expect. And I have Marvella, who will tell me when I am wrong about the rosemary and who knew when to show me her phone and who trusted me to do something with what she'd found. That kind of trust is not nothing. That is, it turns out, almost everything.